What's up guys, this is Zero Kitsune, and today we're talking about the voice actor strike. Now before we get into it, I want to make one statement. Voice acting is been basically the death of complex and varied dialogue in games. Just gonna throw that out there. Think about your RPGs, your Fallouts, your Skyrims, your Wastelands, your Mass Effects. Dialogue's gone downward since voice acting really became a thing that everyone wanted. But with that said, you can debate me on that in the comment section. Let's talk about the strike itself. I am torn on how I feel about it. Now, some people would probably say, there's no torn about this, it's good no matter what. To that, let me say, it's less about the strike that I'm torn about. I'm not torn about the strike at all. It's their right to do that, this is their power. But I'm more about unions, because I think too many people just paint one side as good and one side as evil when both have good and evil things to them. I don't 100% agree with everything unions do. Now, I'm not brainwashed, please believe. I've worked at some places that like to throw out a little intro video when you first get there, a little propaganda talking about how unions are terrible for the worker, and I just roll my eyes at them every time. But with that said, now I'm not an expert on this subject, so if you catch me on something that I'm flat out wrong on, please put it in the comment section. I will even make an annotation to the segment I talked about, putting in bold letters, just this is false, so please do so. But let's talk about unions first of all. Unions have pros and cons because they tend to be inflexible, and that causes them to hurt smaller businesses. When a business is struggling somewhat, the union's still expecting to be paid in full. They're telling you, we need this now, or you're done. And they also have rules against their workers so that they have some limitations in the work they can do. That's why in some fields, workers work under an alias, like in the anime industry. That's why you'll see some just made up names in the credits. That's because they're probably union workers and they did this on the side and they couldn't have the union see what they did. A good example is in the game industry is League of Legends. That is why some voice actors are undocumented to this day. There's like a whole list of them if you actually look for it. But a better example would be Teemo's original voice actor. Now I'm gonna quote something from a sound director, and again there will be links to any sort of information I can provide below so you can read and get your own opinion on this. But let me read the quote. Teemo's original voice actor was recorded many years ago and has since joined the Actors Union. The way unions view League of Legends and other frequently updated games, patched every 2 weeks, makes it very cost inefficient for us to use actors in a union. This is why there's a new Teemo actor. Sorry about that. That drives me up a wall just from a game consumer standpoint. I always dislike the fact that Riot was replacing perfectly good voice actors with new, up-to-date, and fresh ones. But that's the problem with League of Legends and me. And it seems very reasonable from this. Another thing is that unions will, due to their demands, cause the actual products that the company is selling to drive up, not necessarily of the company's choice. But I don't know if you could really put that on the union, but some will and some won't. Now I'm not doubting the usefulness of a union. They are there to make sure the workers in their union are paid well, they're protected. I mean, think the Death Star, they ain't have no union, so they ain't have no guardrails and they kept falling off. But extremism is extremism, and if you push too far, and I'm talking about the unions here, bad things will come. With that said, let's look into what the union is aiming for. First of all, secondary compensation. Right off the bat, the one thing I have some problems with, and this may be due to a lack of information on the subject, but basically this boils down to the voice actors wanting royalties. And in a perfect world, I think everyone should get royalties. Everyone that was part of the developed game, or just anything in general when it comes to something being sold. But that's economically unfeasible. But it just feels weird because game developers, and I've been looking at this for a while, they have such a hard time. They work on holidays away from their family. They have a seriously terrible case of unpaid overtime. I mean, just Google the word crunch and it just sucks to be a dev sometimes. Some of them even live in the office. You can find large documented cases in Japan, but it also does happen in America sometimes. With that said, this is the voice actors fight, not the game developers fight. They don't have a union. And another thing that helps out voice actors is simply name recognition. I mean, you have some huge name voice actors. I can't think of any at the moment because I don't know if they're for sure in the voice actor union, the ones I'm thinking about. But they have big names and they can get the fans riled around them saying we're being untreated. But when it comes to actual developers, and this is a sucky thing, how many does the mass market of people actually know developers' names? How many people know Andy Gowan? You know, the man who programmed Crash Bandicoot, or Rogan Walker, who made the original Team Fortress from mod. I don't think that many people know him. Instead, they know people like Hideo Kojima, not a programmer. Ed Boon, not a programmer since Deception. Masahiro Sakurai, not a programmer. And they all, well, from what I understand, they all get paid royalties because they're designers, I think? Yeah. But with all that said, let's talk about a counterpoint to this argument. First of all, this could potentially be a step in the right direction for everyone. Maybe if the voice actor union does strike a deal with them, they get everything they want, this might push into the other sections of the game industry saying, we've fucking had enough with all this bullshit that's happening to us. We want to be treated correctly. And you know, this is the growing pains of an industry. Things like music and movies and television, they've all had time to mature and grow up and figure out all these legal ways so that people are supposedly getting paid correctly. Not all the time. Another point is some companies do give royalties to their programmers. An example would be in 2003 Infinity Ward's royalties deal with Activision. Though companies do have ways to avoiding paying that. Again, links in the description below. And I think this one's probably the biggest one that actually pushes me a little bit more to the side of secondary compensation, despite me having an inherent I can't get that programmer thing out of my head. But it's the fact that they are only really affecting the bigger companies with this. They're asking for bonus payments every $2 million, every 2 million copies sold, in 4 increments up until 8 million. So, you know, 2 million, 4 million, 6 million, 8 million. That really only affects AAA industries. I mean, what is it? I think Undertale only sold 1.5 million up to now. No, I don't actually have citation on that. That's just from my head. So, you know, that's probably one of the biggest indies sold in a while. Yeah, I'm just 50-50 on that. But moving on to the next one, and I grouped these two together: vocal stress and stunt coordination. These have me 100% on. There's no arguing this. This should have been there from the get-go. Personal risk is not something you mess around with. The human body is just not supposed to be making all these noises and screaming for long periods of time. I mean, it was comedic to me when I first heard about it, but an example would be in the anime industry, the Dragon Ball Z voice actor, the name escapes me, but fainting when he had to voice a transformation scene that, you know, requires screaming for like a minute and a half. That's hilarious until you really think about it, then it becomes really scary. And yeah, that should be something that the voice actor has control. They can choose whether they want to, or they get some help determining when they need to stop, because losing your voice in the voice acting industry is that's career ending right there. So they should be really careful on that. And so I'm 100% on vocal stress and stunt coordination. Transparency, this one is just dumb, and not dumb for the strikers, dumb for the companies. This is some, I'm going off my little write down half done script here. This is some fucking bullshit. That is some minimum wage BS where you get hired for a job and you don't know what the hell you're doing. I've dealt with that before, getting hired for a job and then all of a sudden they pile on some other shit that you didn't sign up for, and they just say, do this, you work for us. No, I'm not okay with that at all. It's ridiculous that a voice actor could be given lines to do and they don't even know what game they're doing it for. Apparently, Kellogg from Fallout 4, the voice actor, didn't know he was Kellogg from Fallout 4 until the game was out. What? So, another one they had me on. So, let me be clear. Those are the demands, and one other thing to keep in mind, if you're a consumer, not necessarily a person working for them, companies are going to be pissed off at the end of this, regardless. And they're going to take their frustration out on the consumer, regardless of how the outcome is. They're going to be pushing microtransaction, increasing game prices, and pushing pre-order bullshit because they're like, see, we got to pay these voice actors more. And it doesn't really need to be that way, because you could just shave off a little money at the top and give it to the voice actors, but obviously no company's gonna do that. It's shitty. It's annoying because, in my mind, the way I've seen it, this all boils down to the economy, or at least in the United States, the economy, because video games, in all reality, are cheaper than they've ever been before. And that probably sounds like hocus pocus to some, because everyone has a problem with them being $60. They should be cheaper, DLC, pre-order, blah blah blah. No. Back in the day, setting in for inflation, video games were a real luxury. You weren't able to afford just any video game willy-nilly. And nowadays we have things like sales, hell, returning games to even something like GameStop nets you more money than it did back in the day. But our economy's in the tanker, so everything's expensive to everyone now. With all that said, I wanted to talk about one other thing that I think, not necessarily related because it's much older news, but could be connected to this in some way, shape, or form. And that is BlazBlue Central Fiction not having an English dub. Period. This is kinda shitty because, connected to the voice actor thing, this is just flat out undercutting the American voice actor industry. All of a sudden you're starting to have games that, we don't need you to revoice them. And personal opinion here, I'm fine with that. Not with the Americans being undercutted, but with the no English, because I'm a Japanese purist for the most part, and I also want my fighting games to be released closer together to the Japanese style. I'm tired of seeing my game come out 6, 7, 8 months after the game's been released in Japan while I've been watching gameplay over the internet the whole time. But even though I'm happy with not having English so we can get a game faster and earlier, that is people losing their jobs. That's kinda shitty. And another point is that that would be a snowballing issue, because I've already seen games that just forego English voice acting altogether, and this is just another push. When you have larger games, larger companies do it, then all of a sudden everyone does it. So that's kinda scary. And I assume a large portion of, anime video game players won't care because, they're probably also Japanese purists. But keep in mind that something like Cowboy Bebop, one of the best animes ever, and the creator's vision was the English voice actors, not the Japanese one. Just saying. And the other point I want to make about that, because I want to make one more point on the BlazBlue thing, is that this still won't come with extra content, because whenever a game has Japanese voice acting, they just generally sub the actual dialogue that's also subbed in the Japanese version, just with Japanese subs. But that doesn't sub any of the side dialogues, the background voices, those neat little things that you just won't understand if you're not a person who understands Japanese. So it's kind of shitty in that one. So we're technically getting a weaker product than if we actually had English voice acting. But wrapping this all up, I'm still torn about it, again from the union standpoint, not necessarily the voice actors, but researching this does bring me a lot closer to the voice actors side than I was before. But all this really tells me is something I knew from the beginning. The AAA video game industry needs to flat out overhaul on its process. The press is corrupt and biased, the workers are stressed and underpaid, the consumers are poor and sold lies, and the only winners in the end are the CEOs and the shareholders. But, that's capitalism for you. Trying to end this on a happy note, I can just optimistically believe that in the end, regardless of what happens, everyone will win. And it's probably not going to happen, but I'm going to believe it because I want to be happy about this whole situation. With that said, leave your comments in leave your comments below. I'll read them. I wonder how many people are going to call me an asshole for not just flat out believing in the voice actor strike. But I'll see you next time.